Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to skip forward in our series on the world champions and look at the game by Magnus Carlsen. Why? Well, two reasons. One, Magnus Carlsen is arguably one of the greatest players of all time, and many people believe the greatest player of all time. And considering that he has the highest rating ever, it's a very, very valid claim. The second reason is Magnus played this game, which we are about to look at, when he was 13 years old. And I hope this game will inspire many of my students who are working hard every day to get better and better. So let's get to the game. Magnus with the white pieces. He's playing against Sipke Ernst. E4, C6, Carlsen. White plays the main move, D4. When your opponent lets you control the center, it's a good idea to do that. Black challenges. And now white has three main moves. He can take, he can push, he can defend. There are a few other moves. F3 is possible, for example. But Magnus chooses to defend. Knight c3. Black inevitably takes. Magnus takes back. And now black plays bishop f5, attacking the knight. Black can also play knight f6, asking a knight a question this way. Or he can play knight here first, and then knight here, with the idea that if white ever takes, black will take back, and he will not ruin his pawn structure. Okay, black plays bishop f5. Magnus drops the knight back, asks the bishop a question. The bishop in turn drops back, bishop g6. Magnus plays h4, getting ready to ask this bishop some questions. Black builds an escape square just in case. If h5, the bishop can go back. Magnus develops his other knight, knight f3. He has good pieces. Black plays knight d7, developing his own pieces. Magnus continues with h5. The bishop drops back. And now Magnus asks the bishop what it wants to do, and the bishop trades. If black doesn't take, white will take this bishop, and then black will have a rook on h7, where the rook normally does not want to be. So black takes, Magnus takes back. And this is one of the main positions in the Carlsen. White has very nice development, more space, but black is extremely solid, and an argument can be made that this pawn is actually overextended. If white does not arrange some sort of an attack and things get traded, this pawn might potentially become weak. Okay, let's see what happens next. Pawn e6, black sets up an extremely solid structure. Magnus develops the bishop f4, and black continues being very solid, knight f6. Magnus castles, and we can envision if black castles short, white has very good development. Something might happen to the black king. Occasionally, black also castles long in these positions in order to avoid any sort of trouble. But black plays bishop e7, getting ready to castle short, and Magnus improves his knight, putting it back to e4, but also allowing at some point for this pawn to start moving up the board. Black plays queen a5, improves the queen, points here, occasionally points here. This is important. You need to look at the entire board. And also possibly suggesting that he might castle. Castle long. Okay, king b1. And And black can now, well, this defends this pawn, and also in general, if you castle long, it's a good idea to move your king to the side, closer to the corner, where it's going to be safe. Now, black can try this, but the problem for black is he needs to make sure that his queen will keep defending this knight. And it becomes a little bit risky. For example, this bishop can drop back, and there could be certain issues for the queen. So black does not want to take that risk. Instead, um, he, after king b1, he simply castles. The other issue with taking is even if black doesn't doesn't lose his knight, it does open up these lines, so castling short would become quite scary. Magnus takes, knight takes f6. Black takes with the knight, makes sense. And now the question is, why did Magnus do this? Well, let's see, knight e5. Okay, improving the knight. This is a very, very good knight. Very hard to get rid of it. And Magnus perhaps is considering pushing this pawn to try to open up the king. Rook d8. Black brings his pieces into the game. And Magnus plays queen e2. And there are several points behind this move. First, we're getting away from this line. Black maybe was thinking about playing c5 to take advantage of this. Usually, when you have your queen opposite of your opponent's rook, even if there are things between them, it could make sense to just move the queen away to avoid any sort of trouble. The second point is we might be considering sacrifices here. We're not quite ready to do that yet, but maybe very soon because this pawn defends this guy. And if we take occasionally, especially if we bring our rook, we might be able to take here. Okay, let's see what happens next. Black decides to attack the white king and start to open up lines. Pawn c5. And now Magnus comes up with a very cool idea. He plays knight g6, which looks a little bit crazy. It attacks the rook. And also remember this pawn is kind of busy. Well, black can do several things. Black can actually decline the sacrifice, but then white can at least take this bishop, and then white has a good dark square bishop, for example. But black did not think that there was anything scary about this, so he takes. Of course, now this pawn is undefended, so Magnus takes here. Well, for the time being, it looks like it's a fork. But the point is, if the rook defends, white simply plays this move. But black solved that, and he simply moves the king h8. Well, now Magnus can take the bishop, but of course then black takes this pawn, perhaps with a knight, and black is doing quite okay. So Magnus comes up with an idea. He takes. He's still attacking this, but also he's now considering sacrifices over here to completely open up the king. So for the time being, we are down a piece, but we have 2 pawns for that piece. This pawn is making black's life a little bit uncomfortable. And we have a good queen, and we have potential ideas over here. So pawn takes. Well, this has been attacked. This has been attacked. Black plays knight g8, which deals with both, defends the bishop, covers this square. Knight g8. And Magnus sacrifices anyway. He takes the pawn, sacrificing his second piece. Black takes. And now Magnus sacrifices his rook. And it looks like Magnus is kind of running out of pieces here, actually. But the problem for black is his queen is completely out of the game, and this king is a little bit open. So now Magnus takes, and he's down two pieces. He's down a rook and a knight, but with rank checkmate, it's not so easy to deal with this. So black will have to give one of the pieces right back. And our rook can hopefully also show up on this line. Okay, so let's see what happened next. And by the way, before we go further, remember this. When you're attacking, it's important to count not just the total number of pieces, but the number of attackers and defenders. This queen is important, it's on the board, but in no way is it helping to defend the black king. So that's an important idea to remember. Black plays knight f7. He needs to stop this. Okay. Now, white takes. And now this king might potentially start to get in trouble. So, black moves the king to g7. He gets the king on this line. He's getting ready to take the pawn. After this check, he might take here. So it seems that black is doing okay. So Magnus needs to do something quickly. He plays rook d3. If you're attacking, you want to attack with all of your pieces. It's important to note that this doesn't work because queen covers, so this is not a checkmate. And our rook, this idea of the rook lift, is quite useful. The rook is getting ready to come into the attack. So rook d3. Black needs to defend. Let's really quickly see what happens if he tries to take this pawn. Well, if he does, we're going to do this. Rook here. The king cannot run in either of these directions. So if he goes here, we can checkmate very quickly. This is just checkmate. If he goes here, the same thing happens. If he goes here, this is a little bit more interesting. I'm going to pause and let you find the checkmate for white. And the checkmate is we check, he cannot block, but then we can come back and check over here. And this is game over check. Rook blocks. In here, he has to block with the rook. And this is checkmate. So he cannot take this pawn. That means he has to deal with this. And he comes up with a really cool idea, rook d6, which at first looks like it's a terrible move. It's a free rook. But if you remember, white cannot take. Why not? Well, the answer is checkmate. Remember, the queen is needed over here. If it goes somewhere else, there will be checkmate when you attack, and make sure to pay attention to your opponent. Okay, Magnus checks anyway. Rook g6, rook g3, and black blocks. Again, if he moves here, there is checkmate. If he moves here, there will be checkmate. It's a little bit more interesting if he moves here, because now we can do some interesting things. We can probably start with this move, queen check. This is important. He can't go here. He can't go here because of checkmate. So here mate, and here also mate after the rook blocks. And he cannot block either. So this is important. So after the check, black has to block. Again, notice we are down a piece, but his queen is not protecting anything. Now queen e5 check. Okay, in the game, black took this pawn. Okay, let's see what else he can do. Um, he can't block. That's illegal. If he moves the king here, this is checkmate. This is kind of cool because our queen stops the escape. And if he plays, let's say, here, now we have this check. He has to block. And now we carefully get this king, um, get this king mated. So, what's the best way to do this? Let's think. Um, let's see. What is the best way to do it? There are several ways. We can, um, hmm, let's all think together about this. I'm trying to figure out which of these two moves makes more sense. We don't want to take the rook because we run out of pieces. So we need to figure out how to do it the best way. And the logic is yeah, so we check here. He has to do this. And now we make this check. This is very, very, very important. And the logic behind this check is this king, well, if he blocks, this just gets taken. If he goes to the corner, well, now we have this check. And the point is, now if he goes here, well, blocking is made. And after this move, it's checkmate. So the queen and the rook work really well together to deliver all sorts of mates. So in the game, after queen e5, black took this one. Okay, now another check. Queen here. Well, if the king goes here or here, we can just take the rook. In the game, he blocked with the rook. If he goes here, remember we cannot quite take the rook yet. We have to be a little bit careful. But we want to take the rook soon. We cannot take it right away because remember, we need to pay attention to our opponent. But we can take it a little bit later, and eventually we win. We can, for example, start with this check. Let's say here. If the king goes, if the king goes somewhere here, we will pick this up. If he plays here, we have tricks like this. So let's return back in the game. He blocks with the rook, and now white to move and win. And the move, of course, is queen checkmate. It's quite interesting, quite unusual. There are several lessons which I want you to take away from this game. Lesson number one: when you're attacking, don't just look at the number of pieces on the board. Look at how many attackers you have. Look at how many defenders your opponent has. The second part is when you're attacking, don't focus on your attack at the cost of everything else. If Magnus was not careful, he could have gotten checkmated over here. And so it's quite useful to keep paying attention to everything that's going on. And another more specific idea to remember, there are several ways to bring the rooks into the game. One is get them on open lines, but of course another is this idea of the rook lift, which is quite important. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. More videos on Magnus and other world champions will be up. Thank you.